I become a doctor and I'm just like, this is literally a nightmare. Like this system is a nightmare. And these doctors,
for-profit sick care.
It's a sickness billing industrial complex that was derived from military medicine. Literally, that's how it evolved. And it's great for fixing you if you get your arm blown off.
Sickness billing
industrial complex. It's exactly what it is. It's not a healthcare system. Healthcare would create health and it would care about people. And creating health would mean it would help people adapt and self-manage in the face of adversity. And tell me, did this healthcare system do that for America during COVID?
Dr. Molly Maloof has emerged as one of the leading voices in the psychedelic movement. We have a beautiful, wide-ranging conversation about psychedelics and sexuality. You'll get a keen insight not only into her practice, but everything that she has accumulated in the wealth of knowledge in this absolute pioneering frontier of medicine, psychedelic medicine. Enjoy this podcast with Dr. Molly Maloof. The truth is that we're all the master, we're all the healer, we're all the mystic.
Give it up one time for Aubrey Marcus.
Molly, so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So before we got started, you started talking about the neurobiology of love.
Right.
And actually being able to quantify this thing that has a million definitions, some of which are bullshit. Like there's songs that say love hurts. I'm like, no. It's not the love that hurts. You got it all wrong.
No, totally.
You're misqualifying and quantifying what this thing actually is because it never hurts.
Yeah.
This is something else. But
heartbreak can hurt.
All the things that are associated with love, the validation that you may have lost, the way that your ego may be damaged when it leaves, the desire for it may hurt, the longing for it may hurt, but the thing itself,
no, totally.
That doesn't hurt. And
totally.
I think it's actually helpful if we take this and talk about, all right, like what's happening in this state that we crave more than any other state in our existence. Like this is the thing. You know, there's no better drug than love.
Yeah.
Love.
So why don't I start with like a little bit of a background on why I kind of got interested in this. And this might be a slightly long diatribe, but I spent my, last 10 years optimizing health and doing all sorts of labs on my clients. Like I work with executives, investors, and entrepreneurs as a private doctor. And I teach at Stanford a course on health span. So I'm trying to figure out how do we extend the number of healthy years of living. And it occurred to me in my research that like, oh my God, there's like this glaring elephant in the room that I completely missed. And that's that our relationships are the greatest determinant of our long-term health and happiness. Like they literally determine the quantity and the quality of our life.
And not only our romantic relationships, but our relationships in all of our social dynamics.
Exactly.
Community, family.
Exactly. And there's like, 10 different kinds of love at least. There's all sorts. So we always assume when we're talking about love, it's romantic love. And in particular, I'm studying romantic love. But love itself, we evolved as an attachment device on purpose. It's an evolutionary adaptation in order to help us connect, stay together, because it enhances our survival and our chances for reproduction. Like without love, we would be less likely to live on this earth. Like it's a very challenging world out there. And this is why people get lonely. This is why people actually feel this deep pain when they're alone. It's because it's a primitive hunger signal. And actually, like MIT researchers discovered this. There's actually a place in the brain that senses loneliness and senses it as like a lack in order to get you to move closer to your tribe. So like people in primitive times would have been on the outskirts of their community. And if they didn't feel lonely, then they wouldn't have enhanced their survival by moving closer to the group.
So it's this, everything is adaptive.
Yes.
If you actually look
everything
at
is
it,
adaptive, including
like
a lot of things that we think are maladaptive are actually very adaptive, like insulin resistance, but we won't get into that today. We're going to talk about like specifically why did we evolve love? So I've been studying this woman, Helen Fisher's work. So she's this amazing anthropologist and researcher who had Match.com's entire data set. And so she started studying like the actual neurobiology of love. And she developed this theory that I really think makes a ton of sense biologically. And that's that there's sort of 3 different separate drives of love itself. And the first one is specifically around falling in love. And by the way, my company's name is Adamo Bioscience because it means to fall in love in Latin. So what we're trying to figure out is like, what is this? Adamo. It's a Latin word. Yeah. And basically what we want to figure out is like, since the beginning of time, people have been making songs and starting wars and like doing all sorts of crazy things over love. So why do we value this so much? And what's really going on in the brain? And Helen came up with this really brilliant sort of model that really blew my mind when I learned about it first. And so when you think about like when you're out and you're dating and you're young and you're like looking for a partner, oftentimes what you're typically attracted to is like sex, right? The first thing is like, I want to have sex. I want to have sex with all sorts of kinds of people. And
only when you're young, just when you're young. We grow out of that.
We don't grow out of that. No, I mean, in fact, I think we still have desires to have sex with lots of different types of people. And that's the sex drive. And like, turns out that we have sex hormones coursing through us, right? We have testosterone and we have estrogen. And if you actually are deficient in testosterone or estrogen, like you will have less of a sex drive, like hands down, which is why a lot of people, when they get older, they actually like lose their sex drive and then they do hormone replacement and like, boom, they start feeling normal again. So the sex drive is largely hormone dependent. But interestingly, when we find a person that we like really like having sex with and we continuously do this act with them, what happens is the body starts to produce lots of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. So dopamine is just like this pleasure. It's like, oh, this person brings me pleasure. I like them. You start to get addicted to this person. And then the norepinephrine is the obsession. It's like, I need this person. Without them, what am I going to do? And then you have the serotonin, which is like, they make me feel warm and fuzzy inside, and I like this.
Yeah, and the oxytocin.
And then the oxytocin is actually, interestingly, from the serotonin release. Like it's like it's a chain reaction. So testosterone largely contributes to this dopaminergic effect because we like really like sex, and so sex rewards us with dopamine. But if we keep doing this with the same person, then we get more dopamine around this person. It sets off this romantic love sort of chain reaction. And then the oxytocin is part of the pair bonding drive. So oxytocin and vasopressin are what bonds us to this person. And we actually evolved to have this pair bonding in order to actually maintain, basically have a child and keep them alive. So it's not surprising that like romantic love doesn't last forever for a lot of people. Like the sense of romantic love you can kind of go in and out of it in your relationship because over time, biology has been trying to like optimize for you keeping your genes alive, right? Your child alive. And so part of the reason why I started this company, and it may be a long shot. Like I'm going to put it out there. Like this is a huge long shot, but my friend stumbled upon a formula that actually reproduces like this intense romantic love sensation when you're with someone that you really care about. So like set matters, and the person you're with matters. But when you start activating these pathways in the brain, MDMA can also do this. And it's kind of a similar formula to MDMA, but a different compounds. You start getting these same hormones released, right? And interestingly, people have taken this compound and actually ended up getting engaged. And like this happened in the 60s too with MDMA. People would start taking these drugs and they would be like, we're doing this. And so it
happened to my partner, Vilana, who was not so interested in a relationship, and then they had an MDMA experience, and that MDMA experience led into a very chaotic and tumultuous 2 years.
Right.
You know? And it's obviously there's many other factors, but this was a little trickier. Sometimes we're just on the edge,
right?
You know, and she's naturally such a loving being in general, and says naturally so much desire for pair bonding and desire that this factor was definitely part of the story. You have to put a little asterisk around that experience.
Yeah.
But what you casually mentioned is that your friend discovered kind of the love potion.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Like it's an actual love potion.
Which is like, whoa.
It's whoa. Like, what are you going to do when you have this weird power? Right? Like, you're like, and so I started reading this book called Love Drugs, written by these two ethicists. And I actually called them recently and I was like, hey, it took me a while to get through to them. I finally emailed them with my Stanford email and I was like, hey, I really need to talk to you because you guys predicted that there's going to be an entire class of drugs emerging in pharmaceuticals that are love drugs. And like they wrote an entire book about all the different ethical consequences. And I was like, I'm facing these right now. I'm already trying to figure out what is this drug development path going to look like. You know, my investors are asking me, what is the therapy going to look like? And I need to have ethicists on board because we need to make sure that this is ushered into the world safely and we don't harm people. You know, it's like so important that like, and it's, I mean, I think if you look at all psychedelics, like we just have to be so exquisitely careful with people's psyches because if we fuck it up, like we can really harm people's lives. But if we do it right, we can actually transform humanity, right? Like if we can actually get people to know what it feels like to feel love, then like, to me, the real move is like realizing you can do it on your own with your own mind. Like drugs are they're a key.
But just to feel it that one time, that first time where you feel it pure and you feel it strong and then you go, oh my God, this is it.
This is holy.
This is something that's really fucking special. I mean, I remember my first MDMA experience. It was in Australia and I do MDMA in Australia. And for the first time, we're going around town, downtown Brisbane, And I'm like in love, not only with my partner who I took it with at the time, who had just started dating, but also everybody. I was
Everyone.
seeing people going down. And I remember I saw somebody crying. It like must have been like a breakup or a fight with their boyfriend type of situation. And I was like, oh my God. Like, oh, I love you. Like, I'm so sad that you're sad. Like, and I was just seeing people in a whole different way. And that moment was life altering to have that, not only with my partner, which was great, but also like it was universalized in a really beautiful way. And I started to see people and care about people in a different way. And that one experience is something that can really shift. You're encountering the numinous love.
This concept of unconditional love we've always associated with like Jesus and religion. And I was raised very Christian. And I was told that I would have to ask Jesus into my heart to be able to experience unconditional love. And what I realized throughout my own experience of life and, I kind of like don't really subscribe to Christianity anymore because I've like learned all about all sorts of world religions.
Perfect. Now you can name your love potion Jesus.
This is the Eucharist, guys. No, just kidding. It's not.
You're going to take that Jesus tonight?
No, but it's interesting. It's super interesting. So I was looking at the history of love potions, and like in pagan polytheistic religions, people would take these psychedelic wines as part of religious ceremonies. And then Christianity comes along and they start saying, oh, you witches creating love potions, you are devil and you're evil and you're the devil's work. And they basically took the ritual of the sort of sacramental wine, and they like said, we're going to commandeer this and we're going to call this the blood of Christ. And if you drink this like non-psychedelic wine and just imagine that it's psychedelic and that it'll give you unconditional love, then maybe it will. Now, Brian Mirarescu wrote the book, The Immortality Key, and he believes that like Christianity kind of slowly, subtly absorbed the pagan polytheistic ritual of psychedelic wines, and then it kind of like they let go of the psychedelia. Nobody really knows what happened, but we do know that large-scale religions often adopt certain things, like, for example, Catholicism and incense, right? Where do you think they got that from? Do you think they just imagined that? No, it came from previous religions that these rituals were taken and they were sort of absorbed and turned into these new modern religions.
And the smoke itself was psychotropic. You know,
go.
like that was an aspect of it that we've lost. Oh, it smells good. All right, yeah, that was a part of it. But the concoctions that were actually being used were psychotropic. So people were getting kind of gassed.
Imagine if you went to church today
yeah,
and you actually walked into a room and you had like this experience of transformation.
Just hot box with love drugs.
Dude, I think this is coming because there's like 13.
Yeah, for sure.
There's like 13 psychedelic churches in Austin.
Yeah.
13. And I know there's another one being built right now. And I have a friend who's a producer of movies. She's doing a documentary and she's like, all these churches are trying to like work the system to give people drugs. And I'm like, is there anything that wrong? Well, yeah, there's all the things that could go wrong with that. Because first of all, like basically we need to make sure these psychedelic churches don't end up causing more trauma, right? Like Catholicism, what it's done for, like, for example, Catholicism basically outlawed sex because celibacy was considered to be holy after the church decided they didn't want these priests to like let heirs inherit land and property. So they basically just made priests celibate. But the consequence of that was that they actually demented sexuality and then ended up abusing lots of children, and like 300,000 children in France. So like one thing I hope doesn't happen in the psychedelic churches is that they start absorbing these sort of experiences and then demented shit happens.
Well, I think that's one interpretation of it, but I think it's actually deeper than that. I mean, when you really start to understand the mechanism of union, sex itself as a way, like what is, how do we find God? Well, God is union. God is everything. It's oneness. It's this feeling of connection.
Totally.
And you can experience that with one being. If you can experience that with one being, you can experience God in that state of union. And it seems like capital R religion, and I don't want to point fingers at one because there's been many, especially all the Semitic religions that came out of the desert. There is this thing that's anything that's a way that you can find a pathway to God, whether it's through medicine, psychedelic meditation, wine, or sex, or all of these different things. Let's push those aside so that the only way through is to go to the intermediary, the middleman, which is the priest and which is the church, which grows these big, these big edifices and these buildings. And this is where you go. And it became the most powerful force in the entire world because it took this drive that we have that all of us have access to and said, no, this is the only way. And then they made everything else the devil, including sex, including all of these different drugs and medicines and psychedelic wines and things. And that's had catastrophic global results. Like there's just no way you can fucking get around that. Because when people feel God in their heart, whether it's through sex or whether it's through medicine, their whole approach changes.
Totally.
You can't act the same way. The myth of separation just starts to dissolve because you're like, if I know myself as one with you, then fuck, well, I'm probably one with everybody. I'm just not having sex. I'm not in union with them. So it changes it all. And it's a very important. And I think I heard you say that like these mystical experiences, these transcendent experiences, including the experience of love, they're important.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about treating a condition. It's like the experience itself is important.
Yeah. And the real question is like, can medicine and pharmaceuticals actually shift its model towards consciousness, right? Like 5-MeO-DMT is being commercialized for depression. Hundreds of, like literally over $100 million has gone into one company just for 5-MeO-DMT. That shit is God. Like that is that is like God direct. Like,
it is the pure, it is like the rainbow bridge, like the one that connected.
I remember the first time I did it, I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm staring in the face of infinite intelligence and beauty. And this is what the Bible was like when it was like, you can't stare at God, it's too much.
It's like, unbelievable.
You cannot unsee that.
Indescribable.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not even seeing, it's knowing. It's a gnosis with your
just
entire being. I remember, myself and Vailana were initiated to be able to serve it. It's not something that we do, but we went through the full initiation.
Cool.
So not only do we receive multiple flood doses of 5-MeO, but then we're trained on how to facilitate. And I remember one of my favorite facilitations was we give it to this young woman and she just pops up in the middle of that experience. She goes, "It's real. I fucking knew it. I knew it. It's real. And I knew it." You know, I was like, yes.
Oh my God.
And you just have this experience where they're like, oh, all of this talk about God, this chatter. And then all of a sudden you're there and you've become part of God.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
like,
literally,
whoa.
I jumped out of my first experience with it. I've only done it once and I came out of it like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I was with a doctor, a priest, and a priestess, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, guys, I'm going back in. I close my eyes and I'm like, yes. And I was just like, this is literally bliss. And it was so, I mean, for a whole week after that, I was like, literally, I felt like I was out of body. Like for about a week, I was like, here, not here. And then finally I got back into my body and I was like, that was interesting. Wow. Like, whoa.
It's difficult to actually integrate that in your life in a way that makes sense because you know something, but then it's like, well, fuck, does everything change or does nothing change? Or like,
it all depends on how you integrate it, right? Yeah, the weirdest thing happened to me, the week after. I get to the Battery in San Francisco and this guy
What's the Battery?
It's like a private club.
Okay.
It's like, it was at one point very fancy and like luxurious and it still is, but it kind of like, and everyone left San Francisco. And so it's kind of like still a cool spot, but like, you know, like Tim Cook hangs out there. Like it's cool, but it's like, back then it was like happening.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Soho House in San Francisco. They didn't really have any other clubs. So I get there and I'm like on cloud nine and I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. And this priest he was like, he's a rabbi from Israel that I had met. He had very persistently wanted to meet with me and I'd met him in Israel. Mm-hmm. And I was like, at this hotel in Israel. And we had this wonderful conversation. And by the way, I wasn't like fully aware of like certain religious, I didn't know certain things about different versions of Judaism. And so like after our talk, I just give him this big hug. And when I hug people, like I hug them and I like push love into their heart. Like I just do that as a thing. And it's like a habit. I can't help it. And he kind of like pulls back after the hug and he was like, wow, thank you. And then comes and meets with me in San Francisco. And this is the week after 5-MeO-DMT. And he's like, I just needed to let you know that that hug you gave me kind of changed my life. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, so you're like the third woman I've touched.
Whoa.
Ever. And he was like a rabbi. He was like a, you know, like certain, types of Judaism, like they just don't interact with lots of women, right? Like it's
same with Buddhism.
Like Hasidic Jews, right?
Yeah, same with different religions.
And he didn't look exactly like a Hasidic Jew. I couldn't really tell. So I was like, fuck, what did I do? And he's like, you basically reminded me, like you taught me something in that moment. I literally had this massive awakening epiphany that like my religion has been closing me off to like most of humanity. And I'm like, actually need to be connected with all people.
Even beyond humanity, right? Like the feminine and the masculine, these are the balancing forces. They're archetypes. We condense them because of our mammalian biology into man and woman, but they're archetypes.
Yeah.
It's the mother and the father.
Yeah.
And if you're closed off to the emanations and expressions of the mother, you're not going to have a balanced life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's really impossible to know the full scope of the divine, which is the unicity of masculine and feminine. It's the place beyond polarity, but until you bring both of those, consciousness and the warmth of existence, you're not going to be able to see the full story.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big fault. It's a big, I mean, look, all religions, different ways, different paths.
Most of them are patriarchal.
They are very
Pretty
patriarchal. And it just seems very antithetical to the idea of knowing God without knowing the feminine as well as the masculine.
In these pagan polytheistic religions, they like worshipped Aphrodite, they worshipped Hecate, they worshipped all these different gods and goddesses. They were all sort of symbolic facets of human life, right? That were like personified as gods. And whether they were real or not, like if you even study Hinduism, there's so many female goddesses in Hinduism that are like wildly fascinating.
Right.
And we just like, for some reason, these major monotheistic religions have basically ushered in this very patriarchal structure and kind of like left women to be in the supporting role, which I think is a huge disservice because like you said, we need both.
It's fucking absolutely a huge disservice.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think this is the rise of the feminine. I think people can mistake it for the angry feminist feminism, which is like almost trying to be masculine in a woman's body, which is not the fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's like, how about we all, no matter what body we have, no matter what genitals we have, like, guess what? You're all the mother. You just happen to have a dick. Like, recognize that you in a body is this body, this is the woman. Like, this is the woman. It's just you have masculine parts, if you want to call it that.
Totally.
But to recognize that energy as innate is crucial. And to not have systems and structures that encourage us to find and to know ourselves in that way, with that deep, loving, nurturing touch of, oh, wow, like this is me and this is, wow, this is you. Man, we need that. And this is what I see when I see the rise of the feminine. It's not about genders. It's about the energy, which has been suppressed.
Right. And also, I think that suppression of that feminine energy is actually a massive disservice to men because it makes them feel like they have to possess and grab the thing that they can't have. And that is really not the way that life needs to be. Because I think a lot of women truly enjoy and really would enjoy sex a lot more if they didn't feel like they'd be chastised if they enjoyed it, right? Like women are basically told you have to look incredibly sexy, but you're not actually allowed to have sex. And men, you're like, right? Like, what the fuck? Sorry, but it's true. And it's just silly. Like, we would all be getting laid way more often if we could actually allow women to enjoy their sexuality, which is part of the reason why I even started this company. So like literally 10 years ago, I had like a total accidental spiritual awakening with MDMA on accident. I didn't know what I was doing. It was post-Burning Man. I had met this really wonderful man and we had this really great time. And I was like, let's just continue this for a week in my place. And we created this love nest and we just did a bunch of MDMA together and had a bunch of amazing sex. And in that process, I went from having I had hypoactive arousal, which means like when I would experience sex, like I wasn't getting wet. And then it would hurt when I had sex and then I wouldn't orgasm. And I was like, for my 20s, I was just like, what's wrong with my sexual function? And it was actually that I'd had some traumatic experiences in college, which by the way, 20% of college girls do. And at least probably double that. Yeah. And my earliest sexual experiences were basically reprogrammed in my mind as fear-based, right? So the MDMA...
I'm sure your religious upbringing
and that didn't help
either.
Literally, there was...
Because not only is it a violating sexual experience, it's also the shame that you participated in that
I had so much sexual shame.
So it's like compounding this issue.
I had so much shame around... Like when I was in 5th grade, I was like... They told us masturbation was wrong. And I was like... Because I went to a Christian grade school and there was like praying and there was like chapel and we had to like sing every day. And I remember being like, masturbation is wrong. I've been doing this my entire life. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, that can't be right. And then there was a revival in my school and they literally like, it was like a religious hysteria. Like people were like high on God. And I remember they started
high on judgment, probably.
well, but they literally
yeah.
were burning books
Yeah.
and CDs. Like, who has been to a book burning? Like, no one.
I didn't even know CDs were flammable, but
It was not healthy, right? But I remember thinking, like, is anyone else watching how insane and hysterical this thing is? And so most of my life, my like thoughts around sex were like, stay away from that. Like, don't enjoy that. Like, don't have anything to do with that. And then I have this like miraculous experience where literally my sex life overnight went from totally inactive and like totally dissociated basically to like, oh my God, I have orgasms. I'm enjoying this. Like, I'm actually turned on. Like, it doesn't hurt anymore. And I was like, what if I like shared this with the whole world? And all my friends were like, you can't do that. You can't tell everyone you did this. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I probably shouldn't talk about that. You know, I do have I was about to become a doctor. It was like right before I got my medical license. And so literally until MAPS came along, I was like, oh, so shit, MAPS basically was commercializing MDMA for PTSD. But the real thing that they're doing is fixing the trauma. And PTSD is just a manifestation. But there's all sorts of conditions. Like, not everybody with trauma gets PTSD.
Sure.
Some people get different manifestations. And in fact, a large percentage of women who have any sexual trauma end up with the manifestations of sexual dysfunction, not PTSD. Like, only somewhere around 30% of women with sexual trauma will end up with PTSD, but around like 60 to 80% of them will have some form of sexual dysfunction. So I actually brought this idea to the company MindCure. I was talking to Kelsey Ramsden. I was like, Kelsey, somebody should commercialize MDMA for sexual dysfunction. And she's like, you should do this with us. And I was like, whoa, female entrepreneur telling me I should join her company and like start this movement with her. And I was like, you go do that. I'm going to start my own company because I think I've got a different formula I want to work on that does, because I can't do MDMA anymore. It causes me to have horrible depression for a few days. And it's like, sucks because like, it worked great when I was in my 20s, but for some reason, me and a lot of other people, they do MDMA and like they just have major next week depression. I've actually had friends do MDMA and it like they didn't maybe integrate as well as they could have, and it actually helped reactivate their trauma because of the depression that followed. So I think it's really important to understand that like MDMA is like version 1.0 of love drugs, and we needed to get it approved.
Absolutely.
We 100% need MAPS to get it approved, because if they don't get it approved, everything downstream is not going to work. Like we have to support MAPS fundamentally. But look at SSRIs, right? Like there's like so many different kinds, and different ones work for different people. So like, why not commercialize different versions of love drugs that could potentially help different people? And when this is the thing we need to figure out is like, why do certain drugs work better for one person versus another? We don't really know. Like we need to figure that. And the only way we're going to figure this out is if we do the science.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit to, the repatterning of the sexual trauma that you experienced, because I think it's important not only to have the medicine, but also the partner. And I think this is the thing. It's not like you can do MDMA or love drug 2.0 and just be with some transactional.
I don't think it's going to work that way.
Transactional, unreconciled shadow masculine, and that's still taking and not in union, not actually listening, and not I don't know. It may not be beneficial at all, but the combination, and it's just like the MDMA assisted psychotherapy, right? It's like the MDMA with the incredibly well-trained male and female practitioners, psychotherapists who are actually helping support you in this for this repatterning. And I've experienced this with my wife, right? It's the combination of medicine sometimes, but also me and her working through these things together. That's the thing that's unquantifiable. And like, how do you say like, all right, well, this lover, it's something you have to know. It's just like a feeling that you have to have, which goes beyond what, you can actually study in kind of a scientific study, because there's no pre-qualification thing to say, how reconciled is your shadow masculine when you're making love to this person who has this unquantifiable amount of trauma that they don't even know, and their cervix is actually closed, but it's actually energetic, and you couldn't see it with a fucking microscope that you stuck in there. It's like, it gets very tricky at that point, but it is absolutely necessary. It's one of the most necessary things, but this is where you have to start to tell stories and start to understand, and people have to come into encounters with people who can just help shepherd them. Right. And this is like the wisdom carriers. Like, how do you identify this? How do you learn to trust yourself and learn to trust that, the instinct for pleasure, remove all of the shame from that, remove all of that, and then remove all of this transactional nature, this urgency, and then also have these medicines that can be helpful, but be mindful. It could also open you up to somebody who's not quite right for you. And then a lot of momentum can take place. And all of these stories just need to be told and carried.
Yeah.
And this, if we had a healthy society that was doing this, like, which we're steering towards, we would have elders.
Right.
And the elders would be like, sit down with me, child. Let me talk to you about these love drugs and about what you can identify in the masculine. And it would be, the matrons that would be able to pass this information down. And then the grandfather elders that would be like, son, let me talk to you about this. I know your urges are going to be strong. I remember this, but I want you to see through my eyes how I see a woman. And so that you can see that. And all of these things it's going to take a while to shift, but it's absolutely essential. And it is a real revolution that's at hand.
Yeah. I mean, I really do think that like the 60s, there was a full-on sexual revolution and it was a little bit free for all, right? But now it's like we have so much more knowledge.
Yeah.
Like everything you just mentioned. Like what can we do with all that knowledge to actually help transform society? One thing I'm really trying to figure out is like, and like obviously I'm not gonna figure this out on my own, but like the more I learn about sexuality and the more I learn about all these people who have like experiences with sexual trauma and like have problems with their sexuality, the more I realize like, God, society's all sorts of fucked up when it comes to this. Like what would a healthy society around sexuality look like? What would that look like? Like it's so far from that.
That's a very important question. And it's a dangerous question because then you look at some other stories like Starhawk wrote some novels, The Fifth Sacred Thing and The City of Refuge, and she hypothesized this utopian, society, in which case, and it goes back to the old mystery schools where there's actual places, because it's not just women that have sexual trauma, men do as well.
Of course they do.
And I don't know what you would qualify as trauma, but I was always put so much pressure on myself to perform in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And it was so important. And through
that
my own
in men,
family history, like through my
for
parents'
sure.
divorce and stories about the reason for the divorce was my father, sexuality, not being as good as my stepfather, sexual. So all of this stuff, like, oh wow, the woman who's the most important, amazing woman in my life, my mother, would leave the person if the sex wasn't right. And I think it's just a story anyways that just kind of drifted through and found its way to me. And I don't blame anybody for sharing this. It's just in these conversations, And so in my head, it was like, well, if I'm not performing sexually at the best of my ability, the greatest woman that I'll ever have will certainly leave me. And so I come with all of this pressure. And then I find, of course, as you do, you manifest a situation that's going to exacerbate your fears. I find a woman in college who was very hard to please sexually. And I was reading like books about how to like perform
Probably
sexually.
has nothing to do with you.
I was performing like, how do you do cunnilingus? I ordered books like Sexual Secrets, The Alchemy of Ecstasy. I'm like reading. I'm like, all right, I got this. And I'm really like paying attention. But she didn't like oral sex. And she was like it was very difficult to please her. She had her own traumas and stuff.
She probably
had
some trauma.
Of course. And then if she didn't orgasm, if she didn't climax, she would just look at me and go, ugh.
Oh my God.
And turn over and sometimes just turn her back to me and start masturbating.
Oh my God.
Right. And so, and I was like,
Dude, that happened to me. I would lose my shit.
But I internalized it all. Like, I'm a fucking failure. I'm just such a failure.
Yeah.
I'm fucked
Well, the
up.
problem is we look at sex as this thing that's such a, like America's sex life is like a performative act.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's all based on porn these days. All these kids, all they know about sex is everything they've seen on porn. They've been watching their entire lives.
Right.
And I'm just like, whoa, like really good sex is not about the orgasm. It's about the entire experience, and the orgasm could happen or not. And there are so many different, well, first of all, like women have, I don't know about this with men, but I definitely know about my own body, and that there's like all sorts of ways to orgasm as a woman. But like, I don't think a lot of women know this. And I also think there's like this sort of obsession with like the ejaculatory orgasm in men and the like clitoral orgasm in women. And like everyone's like, this is the orgasm that we must all achieve. And there's actually all sorts of other ways to experience orgasmic bliss.
Yeah.
And yet everyone's just like, no, we have to do this thing, this event. And it's like that pressure kind of ruins the bliss because it's like we're all expecting this one thing to happen.
Absolutely. So after that period, I would obviously look forward to sex, but look forward to it with absolute dread.
Yeah, right.
Because this was like my entire manhood, everything was wrapped up in whether this thing was going to be achieved, whether I was going to stay fully erect the whole time. And obviously condoms are a difficult thing to manage when you're also under all that pressure and all of these different factors were going. So it's this combination of desire and dread that I was all dealing with until finally I found, my partner, Caitlin, and we had a beautiful relationship, and it all started to really heal. And I started I was like, oh, okay, it's all okay. It's all. Yeah. So I found a partner, and also at that point, I was doing MDMA, and we would do MDMA. And so I found my own healing. Yeah. That then allowed me to be in a state where now, fast forward, I can be with Vailana and have healed through my sexual trauma. And there's even still little parts that I still have to unlock, deeper levels of trust and deeper levels of faith in myself, and not being disconnected from my cocks, being like, I fucking hope you come to, I hope you do your job today. You son of a bitch. Like, don't let me down. How dare you, you know? But being like, no, this is me. I don't need to separate myself from this and all this. So going back to that, I just want to highlight the male sexual trauma, but also then if you look at this, then extend it to society and then go back to the old ways in the mystery schools, it gets kind of interesting because that is so taboo to be you could go to a place where there was people who could teach young men about how to engage in divine sexuality and maybe have these aphrodisiac wines. And it's like, never, no, we could never fucking do that. But why not?
And I arguably believe that probably women were running these temples.
Oh, they were.
I'm pretty sure.
They were. And that was it. It was it.
Yeah.
These temples of love, right? These sacred temples, whether it's Isis or whatever. And then, of course, and as the patriarchy came through and kind of squashed all of this, we lost all of this.
Yeah, well, because the patriarchy looks at feminine sexuality as this massive, powerful, intrusive force that creates life. And that is such a threat because it's just like, you got this power to literally sustain the species. And like, we need to make sure we control that. And like, to me, that's like the fundamental like rift between men and women that needs to just like, we need to end this. It's just unnecessary. Like, we work together here to thrive and flourish.
Yep. And there's even potentially some more magical fears that come from this, because in those heightened states of sexual ecstasy and bliss that a woman can have, like,
oh my God,
this is where the manifestation powers can actually grow stronger. This is where like actual magic is available,
for real.
Like real magic. So if you're peddling some fake ass magic and you're like, oh, those women over there in the circle in the clearing, and they're going into ecstatic bliss together with their flying ointment and their sexuality, and they're doing real magic, and we got this weak ass bullshit from a dusty book. Like, fuck them. Like, they're a threat.
Yeah.
And it's just threat removal is really what we've experienced. But yes, it is this creative power that should be worshipped and revered, but also power. Like, there's legitimate available power in the feminine and the intuitive power. And so many power. And it's not to say that men don't also have power.
They 100% do.
But it's like, there's been this, I think, fear that men have had who don't know their own power, who don't trust themselves, and of the feminine having access to that power. But if you squash it down, have women competing against each other, tell them all of these things,
there's
and you
scarcity
can keep it in control.
Right. You have to like run. We're going to run out of dudes. Like, there's no, literally, I tell my girlfriends who are looking for partners, I'm like, you realize there's billions of people on this earth. Billions. There's like more than enough to go around. And yet we have this scarcity mindset in our culture. And it's just like, I really do think that if women want to rise, we have to learn to support each other. We have to lift each other up. And I don't see it enough, honestly. Like, I make a major priority of it, but I definitely have seen women tear each other down. And it's like, it's not helping. And on top of that, like the Me Too movement, like when it first started happening, I was like, fuck yeah, we need to stand up. And then I was like, oh shit, I don't know if we're doing this right, because I actually think it's alienating women in business from men's circles, from men's meetings, from men's after work gatherings. And like, men are starting to get more and more afraid of their inability to control themselves with women. And I don't know what the answer is, but like, I do know that like this idea that you kind of brought up that maybe from the mystery schools of like, what if we all got together and just like had better education around all of this? Like, what if what if there was a way that men could feel safe to explore their sexuality and their urges and their understanding? Like, let me tell you something. I once got dosed with a man's amount of testosterone on accident at a company that I was working at. I was sitting on a chair and like we were making custom compounded nutraceuticals and hormones. It was like personalized medicine. And I sat on this chair and I got this like stuff on my arm and I was like, oh wow, that's weird. That chair's slippery. It must have been like polish or something.
Yeah,
And then
so a man rubbed testosterone
he had
cream on
cream,
his
and
inner
then he
forearm.
sat on the chair, and I sat on the chair, and I start looking at my boss and my coworkers, and I'm like, oh my god, why do I want to why do I want to do things with my coworkers? Like, this is making no sense. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I go in the bathroom, I'm just like I'm just like put my hands on the countertop, and I'm like, look in the mirror, I'm like, Molly, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh, testosterone. Oh shit. Oh my God, I've got a man's amount of testosterone in me today. This is wild. And I was like, if I had to deal with this every day, I don't know. I think women actually should just get prescribed a man's amount of testosterone for like a week and just like walk through society feeling that turned on, feeling that level of like, holy shit, that's what it's like to have a man's amount of sex drive.
Yeah.
And I think if women understood that, they'd be like, whoa. And I think every man should go to a gay club and just like dance with a bunch of gay guys and know what it feels like to have a bunch of people objectify you and like look at you as an object that like they could possess.
I think that's a powerful recommendation.
You know,
honestly,
I
mean, you can't really recommend anything,
but
it would be very like illuminating.
You know,
to understand, to be able to see through each other's eyes.
Yeah,
and look, this is also this is all taking that to the next level. Like, if a man has never received any energy inside them, they don't understand what it's like for a woman to receive energy. You can't also recommend that everybody, have every man have some kind of anal experience, and this is not desirable.
I actually had a guy friend tell me that recently. He's like, I think all men really need to have more anal stimulation. Like, I think it'd be good for them. And I was like, what?
I'm someone who is as open-minded as I am, and as like absolutely, in honor and worship of all aspects and all of the buttons. Yeah. I'm still reticent. I'm still reticent to do it. But some part of me knows, like, come on, man.
Like the prostate and the the Bartholin glands in a woman are like the analogous structures. So when like, this is getting really dirty, but when women squirt, it's kind of the same thing as like the prostate, the prostatic fluid, right? Mm-hmm. So like one of my guy friends who's like, he's a legendary human. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was just describing how he's like, yeah. And so like finally when I got to know my prostate, it like transformed my sex life. And I was like, whoa, dude, go teach that to dudes. Like, that being said, I think it's like, we need to sort of demystify all this and not as like scary or worrisome and just be like, I'll just be curious about these things.
Absolutely.
I'm not like trying to get everyone to become poly.
And there's so much homophobia too. That's this issue with men. And I heard you mention poly. I think we should talk about that because I lived poly for 8 years. But ultimately, like this homophobia that if you start playing with that asshole, what if you like it too much? Mm-hmm. And then if you like it too much, what if you're bisexual or what if you're gay? Okay, so fucking what? Like, so what?
So what?
So what?
So what? You want to experiment?
Yeah. I think this just opening, and it's starting to happen. People are getting more relaxed, but it's still in there. I mean, the word gay was an insult that you would casually throw around about anything. It could be like a movie or a party or something. You wanted to say it was bad or you didn't like it, you used the word gay. Yeah. And this is my childhood growing up all the way into my 20s until people were like, no, don't say that. And you're like, yeah, whoa, I can't believe we were saying that.
Right.
And these things that have been patterned in people that need to get unpatterned and realize, one of my really good friends is Jason Ellis, who's an openly bisexual, and he's tatted head to toe, pro skateboarder, just as masculine a guy as you could come across. But talking to him about his bisexual experiences, and I think talking about the difference between him being a top and him being a bottom, and he was like, well, for a long time I was a top, but then I realized that's like surfing, but not wanting to get barreled, like not wanting to like find that sweet spot, like being on the bottom's where it's at. It's like, that's the barrel of the wave right there. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. And I like believe him. Yeah. But nonetheless, like it's still these interesting taboos that don't allow you to fully understand. Like we don't see each other. Yeah. And I think this is a big part of the healing of the masculine and feminine. It's not judging and othering the other person, but like,
and also respecting those people in the world, including like I do feel like largely mostly monogamous, and then also a little bit monogamish, like curious, but not really poly, definitely not poly. But I like deeply respect everyone's proclivities because it's all about love at the end of the day. It's all about like, how do you want to love? How do you want to be loved? Like none of that is wrong. As long as you respect the other person and treat them as the way you would want to be treated. And you're kind and you're caring and you're empathetic and you like really, there's this thing that people just really need to do. And it's called talk about sex before you have it with people. Like really start like, I think a lot of people could just like sit down and be like, there's this thing called a safe sex elevator speech. And it's like, I learned this and I kind of modified it from this guy, Charlie Glick. And it's like, when were you last tested? What were the results? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are your safe sex protocols? What are your agreements? So like, who are you bonded to? Like, who is your relationship? Like, do you have a primary relationship? Do you have a monogamous relationship? Are you married? Like, people just don't have these conversations. Like, are you just out of a relationship, right? Like, have these conversations before you go engage. And then I kind of added a few more things, which is like, what are your fears? What are your desires? And the last one's what's your safe word?
Let's go. Let's go.
But it's funny, like I think actually the more you actually openly talk about this stuff, the more it actually slows things down between people. Like actually, I think everybody could just slow down because I just think hopping into bed with people immediately without really getting to know them, like we could all be safer. We could all actually usher in like a much safer sexual positive movement that like didn't involve getting syphilis or gonorrhea or chlamydia or HIV. That was like actually about really caring about people's psyches and loving them and making sure that like they're not harmed in the process of these experiences. Because there's always a power differential, almost always, which is what makes sex so great. The polarity of two people.
And exacerbating that is also a very rich portal of like, all right, let's stretch the polarity of dominant and submissive. Totally. Either sex can participate.
Oh, 100%.
But let's stretch the polarity really wide. But there's still so much shame and judgment around it, despite the fact that there's all these clinical studies that are testing people who are in the BDSM or power exchange movement. And they're more socially adaptive. They're generally happier. They're freer in a lot of ways and a lot of qualities. But still, a lot of people have a lot of judgment. But nonetheless, when a book like 50 Shades of Grey comes out, every single person's reading it. I remember I was on a flight when that book came out, and I looked around me, and there were 7 different women independently reading the same book, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like this is like there's some deep stuff there, but it's still somewhat shameful and in all of these ways. But if you open this up, just evaporate all the shame and be like, what are you into?
Well, a lot of people
like,
just
what
really want to
like?
let go. They want to be able to surrender and let go to the experience of sex. And that's what makes great sex, is we can just like let go. Like I just did this ride yesterday on the top, like that point, what was that building called? Stratosphere. And one of my friends was like, I don't want to do this ride. It's going to make me nauseous. Like, don't make me do it. I'm like, you're doing it. And you know, he gets on the ride. I'm like, just completely let go to the experience. I know you think it's going to be terrible, but it's going to be amazing. And we go up, and we just like you're basically shot upwards, and you lose all gravity, and it feels like you're falling, and it's terrifying. But like, if you just let go into that experience, it's just exquisite. It's just like, this is phenomenal. And I think the biggest problem, and even Anne Shulgin mentioned this when she would describe her experiences with drugs and sex, is she was like, the real secret is like the ability to just have untenseness. Like one of her favorite psychedelics was 2CB and 2CB Fly. Those were two of her and Shulgin's favorites. One of his like ways of evaluating his drugs, the tryptamines and the entactogens, was like, how well did it work with sex? And literally that was one of their qualifying, like, is this a good drug? Does it work with sex? It's like,
I mean, what a great thing to stack with people talk about, this stack. Yeah, how about you stack it with amazing sex? You know, like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for this incredible bonding mystical experience? How about this is part of the stack?
Totally.
You know, in the right setting, you know, people around, the right energy, of course. But this is a very powerful force, and we're just starting to put it back in its proper priority, or some of us are putting it back in its proper place of like, this is sacred and powerful. And if we open the conversation, then a lot of the shadow behaviors of sex will start to go away, because people, it won't be like this thing like, I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to look at it. Oh my God, feet, oh fuck, oh God, you know, or whatever the thing is. It's like that, all of that tension then creates the breaking point in the psyche where you just go to grab that thing. It can happen with anything. It can happen with money.
Totally.
too. So many spiritual people who have like renounced money and said money is the root of all evil. And I've experienced this in the spiritual community.
Sure.
Then we'll get into some business transaction. They'll get access to a little bit of money and they get like snap and get like super greedy. And they're like trying to take a whole bunch more money. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? But it's the repression that creates like a kink in a hose. As soon as it's unkinked, boom.
Totally.
It's like this response. And this is happening with sex constantly.
Totally. I'm just so glad we're able to have these conversations because I really feel like people are just like, what are we doing? Right? Like everyone is so confused these days. Like I literally see it everywhere. And I think if we don't start having these conversations more regularly about our differences and our desires and our sexual proclivities and our traumas, like it's going to make it okay for other people to have these conversations, the more we have them out in the open, because they are taboo. I mean, like literally, I recently realized I was like at a concert in Austin and I was just like, I'm starting a drug company. It's trying to help people heal their sexuality and their relationships. And I'm at a rock and roll concert. My life is actually becoming sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I was like, did you think that you were going to be here someday? And I was like,
I mean, the doctor of sex, drugs, and rock
well,
and roll.
The funniest thing is that
pretty good.
The funniest thing is that my brand was Dr. Molly before I even started this company. And I did not know that this was going to be part of my journey. Like I did not expect it. But I started.
Universe winks.
Well, the funny thing is, I saw the psychedelic movement, right? And people are probably gonna think I'm so weird when I tell them all these weird like spiritual experiences I've had, but like I saw what was happening in the psychedelic movement. I saw it was starting in like 2019 and I was like, gosh, I think I should be a part of this. And I was like fasting for 3 days and I was with my friend at his family's estate and I thought we were on a date, but it really wasn't a date because he was literally just there to fast. He was like, I want to learn how to fast and you're a fasting expert. And I was like, fine. So the whole time he's like ignoring me and I'm like pretty turned on because I'm not eating and I'm like not doing anything except for meditating and hanging out in the sun in a swimsuit, not eating. And after that day, like, I went and I worked out at the hotel that was nearby and I did a sauna. So all these mitochondrial bioenergetic capacity building techniques that I study and I use. And then I went and hung out with my friends, said goodbye to this guy, had a beautiful meal and went and hung out with my friends, like connected with my community. And then go home that night and I'm like laying in bed and I'm just like envisioning building some sort of psychedelic company. And I literally out of the blue start having a completely hands-free, touch-free, involuntary full body orgasm. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? Am I being fucked by a ghost? Like, how am I gonna tell my friends this?
The
like,
invisible man got
nobody's gonna believe me. Like, what just happened to my body? And I called my friend who's like this spiritual sound healer and just teacher. And I go, hey, Raquel, like, did that thing that happened to you, that Kundalini awakening involve like a lot of orgasmic bliss? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, that thing happened to me. What does that mean? She's like, well, kind of means your entire life's gonna change. And I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. I have too many things I've got to do. Like she's like, look, you got to surrender. And I was like, fuck. So I started reading books on this and I was like, oh crap, like literally this is going to turn my entire life upside down. I was like, God damn it. And I started meditating, started going to meditation retreats, started going to these things called Kpasanas. This guy, Jorge Yant, is like a legendary businessman and meditation teacher who's like modified Vipassana into like a modern version of it. It's like for the modern individual. Yeah. And I started having just this massive transformation of my consciousness and like total ego dissolution and total reconstruction and looking at my shadow. And in that whole process, it just kind of kept leading me further and further into this direction. And then COVID hits and I see this psychedelic movement just blasting off. And all these people that used to like call me crazy for talking about psychedelics in the like PayPal mafia world, they were all building companies around it. And I was just like, whoa, guys. You literally called me nuts for telling you to drop acid 10 years ago in Maui. And now you're starting companies and investing in them. And 90% of these companies are run by men. And I was like, you know what? Look, like we got one life to live. I'm smart enough. I teach at Stanford. I'm like, I'm a great doctor. And I've like been a pioneer in my space for years. I'm probably smart enough to do this. And even if I fail, I'm going to try. And so I was like, I'm going to start a psychedelic company. And then, I thought about it. And then I went to my this investor who I'm friends with. I'm an advisor of his company and he runs a family office. And I go, hey, what do you think I should do? I'm like kind of stuck. I'm like, do I become this like Dr. Molly, like next generation of Dr. Oz and like Andrew Weil, but like a woman in the media? Or do I like start this company that like tries to bring a love drug to market to help heal sexuality and help improve human relationships and help heal women? And he's like, well, the latter is evolutionary, but the former is evolutionary. Because you're like just an evolution of these dude doctors, But the latter is revolutionary. So he's like, it's really hard. You're gonna have it's gonna be really fucking tough. But he's like, but if you really want to do this, fuck, I'll lead you around. You know, I'll give you $2 million and like we'll fund you. And I was like, whoa, dude, if I've got a lead, that means I can do this.
Yeah.
So I just started the company and I was just like, I'm just gonna go for it and like see what happens. And like, look, it's like a long shot, like everything else in life. But I think importantly, if we don't go out and try to shift the way medicine looks, then it's just gonna keep looking the way it does, and it's imploding upon itself. Like
It is.
I have been watching medicine implode for the last 15 years. Since I've been working in healthcare since 9th grade. I've literally spent my entire life becoming a doctor. I wanted to become a doctor in 5th grade. And I like knew it was my journey. I knew it was my calling. And I become a doctor and I'm just like, this is literally a nightmare. Like this system is a nightmare. And these
for-profit
doctors,
sick care.
it's a sickness billing industrial complex that was derived from military medicine. Literally, that's how it evolved. And it's great for fixing you if you get your arm blown off.
Sickness billing
Industrial complex. It's exactly what it is. It's not a healthcare system. Healthcare would create health and it would care about people. And creating health would mean it would help people adapt and self-manage in the face of adversity. And tell me, did this healthcare system do that for America during COVID? Arguably not. Like arguably, it's left a lot of people in debt. It's left a lot of people broken. We have this system where doctors I'm talking to daily are literally losing it. They have so much PTSD. Like I've talked to so many doctors that are just like, I have all the money I need and I go to work every day and I'm like, is this it? Is this it? And I basically left the mainstream system and started building my own sort of version of health span medicine. And people thought I was nuts. My parents thought I was crazy. They were like, you're a nut job. Like, what are you fucking thinking? Leaving mainstream medicine, trying to do your own thing in the middle of the most like competitive place in the fucking Americas? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And like, you should believe in me. And they're like, look, we think you're a fool. And I was like, oh shit. And then my friend came over and I was crying on the floor and he was just like, Molly, you got to pick yourself up off the ground. And he's like, you have to get your shit together. He's like, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody will. And he's like, I'm going to give you these tarot cards. And I was like, what am I going to do with these tarot cards, dude? He's like, look, I'm going to do your tarot. And he pulls out the Fool card. And I was like, oh my God, the Fool. What the fuck? I am a fool. I made a huge mistake. And he's like, no, Molly, the Fool is like a really fucking great card because you're literally doing something that might look crazy, but it also might work. Mm-hmm. And it's the beginning of an entire journey, entire hero's journey you're going on. And like the thing about life is that you're going to go on multiple hero's journeys. And like they're going to take you to places that you didn't expect to go. But if you don't go out and try and have courage and like lead with love, then like you're going to just continue living the same mundane existence you're going for.
And to live that blisteringly true life to you, and let's say you, quote, fail at the end, who gives a fuck?
Who gives a fuck?
No one's ever regretted, like, do you hear that deathbed regret of like, I gave it everything I got. I poured my heart, soul, passion, and love into building something that I believe would change the world, and it didn't work out. I wish I would have never done that. Yeah. No. Nobody says that.
No.
Nobody says that. They're like, fuck yeah, I gave it my best. What they regret is, I've played it safe. I just followed. I stayed in the routine. I did what I was supposed to do, but I never really went for that thing that I knew that I could possibly do. And that's the thing that people don't realize. This idea of playing it safe, like that's going to yield a good result. No, it's not. Fucking go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. Like go out on your shield. So what?
Exactly.
Like this is what we're here to live. Okay, hey.
Like if you're gonna go for anything in life, you just have to put yourself in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just have to. And if you're you might get like partially injured or killed, but at the same time, like I know people are gonna call me out and they're gonna be like, this woman is evil. This woman is the devil. She's trying to usher in sex and drugs. She's gonna like cause all sorts of havoc. And it's like, no, actually, I think I'm one of the more responsible people in the world that's trying to do good. And
then you have the people who know you, and who will be like, as those attacks come, they'll be like, no, side to side, like, no, fuck y'all. You want to go through her, you're going to have to come through me and them and
totally.
them and them and them and them. And this force is starting to build. And that's one of the beautiful things. I mean, yes, this time has highlighted how deeply, deeply flawed our system is. I mean, you can look at Dr. Vivek Murthy talking about how loneliness is the #1 epidemic in the world and all the studies about loneliness.
And it's so simple to solve. It's so simple. It's community.
It's community.
It is literally connecting with people.
Right.
That is the only thing you need to do. And by the way, we should have drugs that are legal, that are enabled to be given to groups. Like there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to go to a group sound ceremony and take ketamine legally. Like there's zero reason. It's super fucking safe.
Yep. Call up John Hopkins.
Come on.
And put it in an arena.
I mean,
I feel you. I feel you.
We need these group experiences. This is why ayahuasca is so important, right? It's like we need to have seriously like sanctioned group experiences that bring us together in a place of love and connection. And we also need to be able to, like, for example, meditation is also a great way to get there. And like meditating in a group of people is one of the most powerful experiences you can have.
Sure.
Like whether you go
breathwork with a group
whether
of
you do drugs or not.
This is what my organization Fit for Service is all about. We bring people together through initiatory, transcendent experiences
Beautiful.
And sharings. And at the end, people form friendships that are deeper than friendships they've ever had in their life, just from these processes, these shared processes. We don't even use we use the medicines of breath, the medicines of ecstatic dance, the medicines of meditation and sound healing and soul quests and soul wanders out in the wild and these encounters, the sharing circles. There's technologies that don't even require external exogenous substances, but are available. And it's just that intelligence. But going back to what I was saying, like we understand that, loneliness is this absolute epidemic. We understand that obesity is one of the leading risk causes for all COVID mortalities, right? This is not a debatable fact, but how much effort with the trillions of dollars we've launched have we put towards loneliness
or obesity?
And it's like, where? It's like fucking crickets when you look out there. And if that doesn't wake people up to that this is not health, this is about something else, I don't know what will, because these are glaringly obvious. And instead it's isolation and this last stage intervention. And whatever you feel about those, fine. But let's look at these big, massive, massive things that are not being addressed.
Like imagine if we can bring a love drug to the world that's a self-love drug that like teaches you about loving who you are. What would that do?
Change everything.
Right? Like when I finally, truly learned to love myself, which was literally in the last year, holy shit, did it change my entire reality. And it's like made it so easy for me to love people. Like just so easy for me just to like send love to people.
It's almost a prerequisite, honestly.
It really is.
It's like very difficult to love another if you don't love yourself.
Really is. Absolutely true. And the thing is like obesity is whenever I see an obese person, it's like I am seeing two things. They're unconscious to their eating behavior or there's often major trauma under the surface.
Sure.
And what people don't realize is that when you develop insulin resistance, and you overconsume and you eat because of stress, which a lot of people in impoverished situations do, and the only food available to them is the unhealthy packaged processed foods and fast foods because that's all they can afford. Basically, those foods and that stress response literally, in primitive times, like we would have sought food in order to help survive. Like it's a primitive impulse to just seek food to survive. Like it literally is baked into our biology. And like insulin resistance, which I've discovered through my research, was actually an adaptive response in the short term. It's actually an adaptive response in the short term. If there's no food available, your body actually naturally becomes insulin resistant in order to enable you to actually fight off infection, put on food very quickly, and actually be able to mobilize fat available to you. Like basically be able to keep, not mobilize fat, but be able to keep blood sugar in your bloodstream. So you have fuel available to your brain so that you can get out of danger. Right. So that like insulin resistance would naturally raise your blood sugar. And I basically look at obesity and a lot of things as adaptive responses that are gone awry in chronic situations. Sure. So chronic stress just means people chronically eat. And if we just taught people these basic understandings of their biology, maybe the government could actually do something. Like maybe they could actually just teach people, this is how your biology works. Like you're going to crave food and unhealthy food, but these food companies, they're just they're taking advantage of that primitive desire to survive. They're just shoving food in your face, selling it with sex, by the way, and saying look at all these movie stars and pop stars that sell soda. Like Coke says, they literally sell Coke and it's two teenage people falling in love. Coke is love. Fuck you, Coca-Cola. Yeah. Literally, fuck you.
Truly.
That is not love. That's literally causing disease, fundamentally. Yeah. And it's just, this is what happens. This is just so transparent.
Well, and the problem is if we expect the government to actually change any of this. It's not going to happen.
No,
because,
it's consciousness.
Big food, big pharma, big ag, big whatever, big military industrial, big jail, they're the ones that fund all of the campaign contributions anyway. So the government is part listening to what the people need to get elected, but mostly just trying to appease all of these massive forces, the real oligarchs that are kind of running things. So these transformations and revolutions must come from culture, must come from people. It's going to be these conversations in mass at large scale that start to inform people. And then looking at all of the different things that can help explain. What you said, I absolutely agree with about all of that stuff. And I also listened to Charles Eisenstein, who talked about one of the reasons why he surmises that people reach for food is this self-rejection and self-condemnation, which makes somebody feel smaller and smaller and smaller.
There you go.
And so the desire to eat food creates the one thing in which they can enlarge themselves, enlarge their being, they enlarge their own body in a way. And it's like, maybe for some people, maybe not, who knows? But these interesting ideas about, like, instead of just judging somebody, let's just look at, they're attempting to solve a problem. What is the problem? Is the problem stress? Is the problem that they feel so small? Is the problem that they're having, coping? Is the problem trauma? Is the problem that they were sexually abused because they were attractive and they're actually subconsciously trying to make themselves unappealing and unattractive?
Yeah.
I had a partner who was sexually abused and then that caused her to want to be a tomboy. She wanted to discard her femininity and become more masculine because of that. Yeah. So all of these factors, instead of just lobbing judgments, let's look, there's a reason. Let's try to help them find the reason, hold their hand and be like, hey, let's dig under, let's look around here.
When's the last time your doctor asked you what's your core wound? How about that? How about that? How many people know their core wound?
Right.
Once you know that part of yourself, it literally shifts your reality because you realize how many triggers come from that. How many just come from that, that thing that made me feel safe because I was having to adapt to this thing that happened, And everybody has some form of trauma. I mean, almost everybody. I'd say the vast majority of people do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people may not be able to name it until you start to just really kind of see that so much of it is unconscious.
And a lot of it comes out in these psychedelic experiences. I've had a lot of friends discover, I had a patient and he was just there was definitely something buried in his consciousness. And I was just I think this guy has sexual trauma. And he even kind of brought it up. And he was yeah, I know something happened when I was a kid. I just don't know what it was. Not really sure. And I don't know really where it happened, but it seems just fuzzy to me. And I was maybe you want to go try some ketamine assisted therapy.
Yeah.
And it was through his therapy that he just is I saw it. I saw what happened. I saw who it was with. I remembered everything crystal clear. I forgave them. I realized it wasn't my fault. And I was he's I feel so free. I feel this shame that I've been carrying that I didn't even know I was carrying, this unconscious shame was just lifted. And he's I'm on this new journey and I feel so much calmer. And I was wow. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's always to me when someone says, yeah, I just don't remember my childhood. I'm uh-oh.
It's called dissociation.
This is, but you have to be careful because it's
you can't really say that.
You can't suggest something because then you could suggest something that could go in their mind.
Totally.
And then you also have to know that if they're going to uncover this, they need the right support and
100%.
care that's going to help them
Therapist,
through the whole other side of it, right?
So I really do not condone ketamine.
It's not fucking take some MDMA, figure it out.
No.
Good luck.
In fact, I think
either,
the most important thing people need to emphasize with all therapy, all psychedelics is if you do not integrate properly, you are uncovering trauma and it's a gaping wound. And you got to sew that shit up properly if you want the scar to heal.
Right.
You really got to sew that up.
Yep.
With good suturing, you can not see a scar. It can be very faint, right? But the problem is a lot of people just leave that wound open because they're just they go into these ketamine clinics and they're hoping to get help. And I've actually seen people come out of them more traumatized and addicted to ketamine. And literally they pursue straight ketamine, which we know can be laced with fentanyl. And it's we have got to talk about the dark side of psychedelics at some point because these ketamine clinics, they can transform you, but they can also damage you, especially if you end up with an addiction, like ketamine use, right? If you go into ketamine therapy thinking you're going to heal your addiction, you end up with a new one, that's a problem with the industry. And this is something that we just all need to start self-policing. And I don't think it's being done properly. I think a lot of people are just first of all, it's a really good business. Like people make a lot of money. It's like doctors are charging an enormous amount for very cheap medicine, but for all the care around it, you have to like charge for the staff. And in the future, like I do think there's going to be a way to make this cheaper, safer, more scalable. I just think we're in this place of everyone figuring it out.
Yeah.
I am very concerned though that if we don't figure this out, then it's going to kind of spiral out of control.
Yes, and you know, like I think right now we have such a rampant, raging inferno of a problem, right? And we're so conscientious about, you know, psychedelics, you know, being impeccable in this.
I
so
know.
that we're not,
I have
so
like
that,
such a
so that
utopian vision of the
we're not
world.
starting little fires.
You know?
And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But meanwhile, fucking bonfires, catastrophic building fires,
Yeah.
fucking worlds on fire. are
Totally,
going on
literally.
everywhere.
Germany, there was like a massive protest against vaccines like yesterday. There was a trampling at Travis Scott's concert.
There's fucking crazy
All
shit.
sorts of shit's
crazy
happening.
shit's happening. And if you look at the
People
number,
are trying to anesthetize themselves.
yeah, if you look at the numbers of everything
Please
that's going on,
anesthetize me. I cannot handle this.
right. So it's kind of interesting, and I agree, and I totally agree with you that we should be impeccable, especially at the
We should
precipice of
try.
legalization. Like, do our fucking best, but at the same time, I still err on the side of leniency of like
Yeah.
it's still net positive.
I'm all
And
for
it's-
medical freedom.
It's
first
still
of all.
net positive. Like, let's say hypothetically, in a wild, like raging fire, in order to stop the fire from spreading to a different part of the forest, you put a chemical in the water that was going to make the wood less flame retardant.
Right.
Which the trees, it's not great for the trees, and maybe the squirrels don't like it, but
Yeah.
it's not going to kill them. But it's like not the best thing.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you stop a whole fire from, you know, whole forest from burning down.
Yeah.
I think that in some ways, even the proliferation of ketamine, let's say, for example, you're, you know, habituated to benzos or habituated to opiates, and all
sure.
of a sudden you take low dose ketamine lozenges as a new substitute for
Yeah.
that, and it allows you to cope with that, or instead of
They're a lot safer.
your habitual alcohol use, right?
Oh, I've seen a lot of people go off alcohol with ketamine.
And so these things are like, yeah, all right, maybe habitual ketamine use isn't exactly optimal.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, as a substitute, maybe it's an intermediary. It's going to do way better than
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that's out there. Doesn't mean that some people won't take it way too far,
For
as they
sure.
always do. But I kind of also want to voice that, yes, impeccable as much as possible, but also the net effect
Yeah.
is going to be dramatically better.
And these lozenges, there's very, very little evidence that they cause bladder toxicity. It's like you have
Yeah.
to be really loading these like daily, lots, like all day long. Like it's really hard for you to abuse them. They don't taste good. They taste like shit. Like
Yeah.
they're not like a fun thing to put in your mouth. That being said, I do think that you're right. I think that like we do, if you really think about it, like there's this research that a friend of mine did. She has a TED Talk on this, and it's like they gave animals that were about to experience a PTSD level and stressor ketamine before the experience, and it did not convert to PTSD. Like the actual, like typically there's a way to induce PTSD in animals through these experiments. So they ran the same experiment, but they give them ketamine prior. And it just like completely obliterates the PTSD risk.
And then they need to do ketamine therapy on the animals that
Right?
have PTSD.
No,
like,
exactly.
Hey, little buddy, it's all
Right?
right. It's all right.
God, these
It's
poor
gonna
animals.
be. It's gonna be okay.
You
Give them a
know?
little scratch behind the ears
You
on some
know?
good dose of ketamine.
But like imagine in like refugee camps. Like what
course.
if we were to be able to give lozenges to people who are entering a refugee camp for the first time?
Yeah.
Like immediate sense of like dissociation and safety and third person view of what's going on. And you're like, oh, okay. This is intense, but like
Right.
we can handle it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's this kind of bias of, you know, all of these pharmaceuticals that are causing all of these, you know, crazy dystopian problems. Well, they're okay because we've already accepted them, and there's all these deaths
exactly.
and overdoses and misdiagnoses and blah, blah,
Exactly.
blah. But these new things, watch out, you know, and,
Right.
and they tend to be sensationalized when this thing happens. Like I think
Yeah.
in Amsterdam, they, you know, now it's only the truffles that are legal, not the actual caps of the mushrooms
Interesting.
that are legal. And the reason is that one young woman who took actually the mushroom caps decided to jump off a bridge. Tragedy, right?
Yeah.
But that one instance then
Literally
sensationalized
one.
and
Yeah.
changed everything. Meanwhile, like 900 people die of Tylenol overdose every year, and you like don't even know that for like acute
And
hepatitis.
SSRIs have a black box warning for teenagers so that if they take them, they're more likely to commit suicide.
Yeah.
SSRIs
and sometimes horrible ways. There's a story that was on a documentary that I can't remember the name, but a woman in college goes to the college doctor, gets subscribed some SSRIs, and I don't know exactly the the details of this. It's not really fresh, but she committed suicide by lighting herself on fire.
I mean,
and that one thing doesn't make headline news. Right, but you're damn sure know when an ayahuasca death happens.
Yeah,
like you're for sure that's out there everywhere.
Yeah,
and I understand. Sure, like let people know the dangers of ayahuasca. There are dangers. The dangers of the practitioners taking advantage of the people. There's actual, brujeria, and in this place, there's ways in which people can manipulate you when you're open in that conscious level. There's lots of issues that should be talked about, and I make sure to talk about. This is not a panacea, and this is not everything is good. But nonetheless, there's horrible shit happening that we're not even looking at.
Yeah.
But then we have this really like ego myopic gaze. And I think it's because people are afraid of psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid of that moment where they take something and they feel love, and then they go, oh my God, I've never really loved my wife or my kids like I ever did. And I never loved my life. And oh man.
Yeah.
Like that moment is scary.
It's terrifying.
It's scary for people. So it's easier to say, no, make it illegal. I don't, maybe there's some conspiracies or whatever, but I think a lot of the legislation against psychedelics is just, people are scared.
Well, they're scared because of like the 60s and like the mass hysteria, and they had to stamp it down. I mean, look at Nixon. Like he was just like, the war on drugs, right? Like, let's just put a war on this. And it's just like, okay, well,
yeah, if Nixon and Reagan could have had your love potion, who knows?
The funniest thing about Nixon is so interesting is that he actually like started this space program, and like literally like shot these 2 probes to space and like literally put like $8 billion into the space program. So it's like this guy was kind of a doofus, but like he did something cool. Like, he like didn't understand drugs, but he understood space. So like that was neat. So like can't completely fault him, but like I just think that people don't understand these things. They don't realize their power. I had a call with Rick Perry. He's pro psychedelics. Mm-hmm. This guy is like full on like, let's get these legal in Texas. I mean, if we can get Texas on board, come on. Like maybe.
Well, Texas is now Texas is not the Texas it used to be.
No.
And Florida is not the Florida it used to be. Florida used to be the butt of a joke.
Yeah.
But now it's like.
Now it's cool.
Damn, Florida's fucking.
Florida got sexy.
Florida got sexy as fuck lately,
Yeah.
And so it's interesting what the times have had. And those are the things that are, it's cool to just look at and look at how things are evolving and how all of these things that you used to take for granted are now different. I remember I went to a party, and it was in a community in Austin, and a really spiritual community. I mean, sound healings and medicine ceremonies. And that's the only context I knew him at. And it was a party during the election. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go. They want to have this party. And it was like super pro-Trump party. And I was like,
wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like all of you fucking sound healing, psilocybin journeying,
whoa.
Like what?
Whoa.
I was like, whoa, like this is interesting.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't agree with a lot of the rhetoric of what they were talking about, but it was interesting to see like, this is not what I expected at all.
I mean, America looks so different.
Things are so different than they used to be, right and left, and all of these judgments that we used to have. Like, let's all just take a step back and be like, all right, what's going on here?
I mean, I would like someone to answer that for me, because I was literally walking around Vegas last night being like, why is it that I feel like I'm a stranger in my own country and I feel more normal in other lands? Like when I leave the country, I'm like, I feel like a normal person. And like in America, I'm like, where are we? Like, what is this place? Like, I've been nomadic for 2 years. I'm about to like probably land in Austin for at least, I don't know. Austin feels really good these days.
I hear you.
I'm really loving the energy. The live music's incredible. Like the people, the vibes. It just feels like normal life there. But like I've been all over the country, and I'm just like, wow. Everywhere I go, America just looks so different. Like everywhere I go, there's so much change. Mm-hmm. And there's a few places that like don't really change. Like my family has a place on this island in Wisconsin. It's just, that place doesn't change. And I'm like, I love this spot because it's always the same.
Right.
But most of the country is just going through a transformation. I think so many people are just like, people are just trying to make sense of it all. Like it's hard to do sense making in a world that's so different. And like, so there's like more people that associate with spiritual but not religious. So there's like this mass of spiritual but not religious who don't even identify with like a modern religion. And then there's all these people who are like, I don't have a home. I'm a nomad. Like I live everywhere.
Yep.
And it's just so strange to like
all of these
political groups. Like the vast majority of people I know are like, I'm post-partisan. Like they're like not even into either side. They're like, I don't feel like I relate to Democrats or Republicans. Like, what do we call ourselves? Like we're in this new mass of people who are trying to figure things out.
And another interesting thing I've been talking to Daniel Schmachtenberger.
I love Daniel, dear friend of mine.
Yeah, I love him too. And he's so smart. And
yes.
And he's really identifying that we need this cultural revolution to be able to check the powers that be of like exponential tech and all of these different forces I was mentioning. And it's going to come from the culture. And one of the interesting things that he was pointing to that we're going to start a project working on is taking the religious institutions, which still have a lot of traction, right? Yeah. And if you reduce it down to the mystical roots, take Judaism, for example. Like I had this amazing interview with Rabbi Mordecai Finley, who's deep into the Kabbalah. And you go to the Kabbalah and you're like, yes, like and we were talking about all me from my 22 years of psychedelic experience, all of my experiences, how they related to the Kabbalah. And then you go into Taoism and you're understanding like my 9-dimensional cosmology of the universe and God, and which one is the Tao and which one is the word and which one is the logos, and how all of these things go in. And you start to find the mystical roots, and the mystical roots of Christianity, as like I've talked to Ted Decker about and different people. And you start to go through and you find these mystical Sufism, which is like a mystical roots of Islam in many ways. And you start to realize that everybody starts to congeal around common truths, just different ways in which they look at it. So if we can get the religions actually to start looking back to their roots, back to their mystical roots, and then bring people back through these wisdom traditions, and then use that as a force that can help rally people. And it could be the same for politics, right? Like okay, what is the essence of your leaning towards liberal? Like what's the real essence? Not the politics, but the essence. And the essence of conservatism and individual rights and sovereignty and states' rights. What is the essence? Can we reduce it to that and have us attached with that?
A good friend of mine, Tom Chi, do you know this guy? You really should interview this guy. He's an absolute genius. His entire thesis of his investment fund is like, how do I create and invest in technologies that are net positive for humanity and nature, and that actually save. They basically are like they offer better returns on investment than traditional technology. So this guy is a real thinker. I was asking him about this sort of like dichotomy of like liberals versus conservatives, and he's like, well, look at the roots of the words. Like liberal is all about liberation. It's all about breaking free of convention. It's all about exploration. Conserve is about conservation of the things that we value, trying to preserve those traditions. Right. And we need these polarizing forces in order to ensure that certain things are not lost, but that we are able to explore. And like, where can we just keep meeting each other? Like we just accept that there's these different forces and we don't fight against each other. We just accept that like there are certain things that we probably should preserve and certain things that we probably should explore. And like psychedelics is a great example. Like we probably should be exploring these. They seem important to consciousness expansion. They might be tools to help us explore our consciousness. I 100% predict there's going to be a time in the future where everyone finally gets it. And it'll probably be like 50 years from now. But like there's going to be a time where people just realize that you can literally generate so many things with your own mind. Like there is so much power in our own consciousness. And if you can learn to hone that consciousness, like it takes work, like massive effort. You have to actually be able to have time and effort to dedicate to spiritual practice. But I literally went and meditated on a meditation retreat. And I basically like sat there, I wrote out every adjective of what MDMA feels like. And I was like, what does MDMA feel like? And I like sat there and did a meta meditation, literally thinking about, I feel sensual, I feel connected, I feel alive, and I went through every single adjective. And by the end of that hour meditation, I was full on MDMA, full on met God, samadhi, had to leave the tent and go to the bathroom and look in the mirror and be like, what the fuck just happened?
Beautiful.
Like it was like just an experiment, right? I was like, can my brain do this? And it did. And I was like, okay, I don't think I can teach that to everybody overnight, but if we can get people to start meditating and get people to start doing 10-day sits and get people to realize that like psychedelics are just one tool in the toolbox, they're a key that unlocks a door. If I didn't know what MDMA felt like, I don't think I'd be able to write out all those adjectives. Right. I could bring myself back to that moment through deep concentration. And I was like, God damn it, mind is incredible. Like this is bonkers.
And I think this is one of the great things that Dr. Joe Dispenza's doing.
He's great.
Right? Like he's reminding people that this thing called the placebo effect that we try to rule out is actually the magic itself. It's like, what is that? It's the mind changing the body in a substantial way. Substantial that we have to account for it in every single clinical trial that we do because it's that fucking powerful.
Yeah.
What if you go into that and use that for your own good? And he's reminding, and miraculous things are happening. When I went to his retreat, I'm just watching this and hearing stories of people who have used their mind
literally
in these ways to transform their health, their life. And this message of empowerment is not the message that we hear out there. It's like, you're a broken machine, you're fucked up, take this pill and take it forever, and this is the only hope that you got, you know? Yep. And so it's really all of these stories starting to weave together that give people back their power. Like time to take our power back.
It is. And also just empower people to feel like that's possible, right? So many people just feel hopeless. You know, they really just feel like, I don't know how to get out of here. And that's a frequency issue, right? That's just lower vibrational energy. And like, I don't want to get too deep into quantum physics, but like literally you can think your way, like you can really just like, you can use the power of your thoughts to create the sensation of love in your heart at any time. But you just don't feel like that's possible because things can feel so painful.
Yeah.
But like it is a practice, literally a daily practice that you can bring into your life. And you don't need Jesus to do it. Like Jesus is great. If you need Jesus as a tool to bring love into your heart, awesome. I still pray to Jesus sometimes. But I also just like actively close my eyes, regularly generate love. Just like literally just like lay there and be like, oh, love, bathing in love. And it's just this weird thing that like, you think that you need to get it outside of yourself. You think it's found in this relationship. You think it's found in like everything external, but it's like, no, literally you find it internally and then it magnetizes externally. Everything around you starts becoming more loving. People around you start noticing your loving experience and they start like reflecting back to you what you feel. Like it's literally magical.
It's one of my favorite things that Ram Dass talks about is about how you open your heart. And he says, find something that you love, anything, doesn't matter. It could be a puppy, it could be a kitten, it could be your partner, it could be a tree, it could be whatever. And just keep loving that thing.
Right.
And love it more and love it more and love it more and love it more until your heart opens.
He also says love the pain.
Yep.
Love the pain.
Yeah. And
like
that's a whole other level.
That's a whole other
level. And that's the ability that you'll ultimately have once you hone the ability to love. But everybody can start with something they love.
Yeah.
And then just love that more, like expand that. Let's turn the volume knob up on this love and just keep going. And that could be your practice. And practice makes the master. That's what Don Miguel Ruiz says about in Mastery of Love. Practice makes the master.
Practice. Yeah.
Molly, this has been an amazing conversation.
This has been so much more fun than, I mean, I thought we were going to have fun, but like we went for it today.
Of course. That's what
we
we
really did great. I mean, this is really, really profound.
Yeah, amazing. So what can people do if they want to get more Molly?
Well, first of all, like try going to Burning Man when all your friends are looking for you. No one can find you. No one. I mean, the best way to find me is on Instagram, at least, at drmolly.co. You can also email me at mmalloof@stanford.edu. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Twitter at Molly Maloof MD. Like, I'm all over social media, so I'm available.
Beautiful. And are you working with Karen at Harper Wave with a book?
Yeah. I'm working on a book. So I got a book deal. I actually, in that meditation retreat that I went on that first, like in September 2019, I actually like envisioned creating a book, and it like manifest after I wrote a book proposal with an amazing ghostwriter. She helped me kind of refine the proposal, and then pitched it in February. And writing a book on, it's called The Spark Factor. It's all about biohacking for women, and it's really about how to create more bioenergetic capacity in your body. How do you create that spark of life? How do you bring more energy into your body and thrive? And all the books that have been written for biohacking are largely written for men. And like I basically read all of them and did a lot of things that men do. It turns out they don't always work for women. So I discovered a lot of things that make us different. And I'm just kind of providing people some context of why when you're going to biohack as a woman, you got to be a little bit more careful about your own biological imperatives that are different. Hormones are different. Yeah. And I've made a bunch of mistakes, and I'm trying to help women not make those mistakes. I've also learned a lot of cool things. And I teach a course at Stanford, and I literally like have so many slides that I was going over with my this ghostwriter I'm working with. Like, we're kind of writing it together. Like, I talk to her and she takes my transcriptions and then she like edits everything. And she basically said, Molly, you have enough content here for 10 books. And I was like, well, let's try to do one.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And then Harper Wave was my the one, like the publisher I wanted to work with, because they work with Dave Asprey and Max Lugavere. And so I was like really stoked to work with them. And so we're almost done with the book, and then we'll start the marketing plan and editing next year, and it'll come out probably at the beginning of 2023.
Well, we'll do another show then.
Hell yeah.
Molly, that was beautiful. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. So much love. We love you. Feel the love. Love yourself. Love the world. We'll see you soon.
My life is completely unrecognizable from what it was just half a year ago.
Fit for Service is a community that inspires you to find your own sovereignty.
It's like a coming home to yourself. It's like a coming home to your family.
It's a tribe of people who recognize the interconnectedness of all things.
A group of people who are not only like-minded, but also come from a heart space.
For the purpose of creating support, healing, harmony, happiness.
And it's helped me to really realize the gifts that I have.
Really being seen for the first time had such an impact on everything, on my family life, on my financial life.
It's about showing up in a way that's healing for yourself and powerful for others.
And the medicine that the summit specifically give is they teach you that you can do things that you didn't think that you could do before, and you bring that courage home and start to be a little bit braver and a little bit more courageous, because our times need sincere, honest, and courageous people looking to see where they can be of service.
Joining Fit for Service was one of the best decisions that I've made.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.